Welcome to the Common Man Football Show. My name is James Coburn, and today's episode, we're talking about the Chicago Bears 2018 NFL Draft Class based on analytics. And in this video, we're going to be talking about production and athleticism data relating to the draft picks that the Bears had and what their chance of becoming a successful NFL player is based on the collection of data over various different draft classes. Most of the data I have either goes back to 1958 when it comes to quarterbacks, 1969 when it comes to skill position players, 1989 when it comes to defensive players, and when it comes to athleticism testing, it goes all the way back to 1999. So essentially, you're getting a lot of information about how these players performed based on previous draft classes and what the chances of them becoming successful players are based on that collection of information. And if you're new to the channel and new to the work that I do, all terms and definitions will be in the description. So if you don't know what solo tackle data is, if you're not familiar with what explosive lower body strength score is, etc., just go to the description and you'll get a brief kind of term and definition there when it comes to that data. So with all that stuff out of the way, let's get to the Chicago Bears draft class. And I actually like this class this year. Last year's class, not the biggest fan of it based on the data, but this class, pretty good class, pretty solid class. When you get to the first pick of the class, you get Quinn Smith, linebacker out of Georgia. When you get to his production data, the highest producing FBS linebacker in this draft class, 99.15 in terms of his solo tackle data, pretty much hits the All-Pro threshold and the All-Pro average score. He's above the All-Pro average score when it comes to his solo tackle data. So very, very productive player, by far the most productive in this class. And then you get to his athleticism traits, 54.27 in terms of explosiveness and 86.90 in terms of speed. The only question mark with Quinn Smith is that there has never been a multiple All-Pro to multiple Pro Bowl linebacker with as low of an explosion score as he's had since 1999. But when you look at his production being as good as it is, you look at his speed score, which is fantastic, and you look at his age, because he's also one of the younger linebackers in this draft class, I think there's a chance that he could end up becoming an outlier based on all that information. Bottom line is, does Quinn Smith have a very good chance of becoming a successful NFL player? Yes, and because of that, this was a pretty good pick. If you look at it from the point of becoming a successful player, it has a lot of positive indicators here. Then, of course, you get to James Daniels, offensive center out of Iowa. When you look at his athleticism traits, he had a 90.69 explosive lower body strength score, 65 speed score, 96.46 flexibility score. Based on my data, he was by far the best testing offensive center in this draft class because of his flexibility score. 96.46 is fantastic, and that was the only sort of thing he had over Frank Ragnow. Frank Ragnow is more explosive and faster than James Daniels, but James Daniels has much better flexibility compared to Frank Ragnow. So in many ways, that's kind of the big difference between the two. But still, very good overall athleticism traits. Looks like a Pro Bowl potential center when you look at the averages and, of course, when you look at the thresholds. And I think he'll be a very, very good pick for them long-term as an interior offensive lineman for them. Then, of course, we get to Anthony Miller Jr., wide receiver out of Memphis. When you look at his production data, 77.60, which, you know, unfortunately, it pretty much hits all the thresholds except for 5-time All-Pro and 3-time All-Pro. More so like a 3-time Pro Bowler is kind of what he looks like in terms of the ultimate kind of pie-in-the-sky upside. But when you actually look at the averages at the position, looks closer to a starter than an All-Pro to Pro Bowl player. But still, pretty decent production. I mean, he wasn't not productive. He definitely was above average. And when you look at his athleticism traits, 90.77 in terms of explosive lower body strength score, 72.98 in terms of speed, and 90.68 in terms of flexibility. In many ways, Anthony Miller Jr. is like a Calvin Ridley who's actually athletic. You know, he still has the same sort of issues in terms of his age. He still has the same sort of issues in that he doesn't really have elite production, but he is productive enough and has great athleticism traits across the board. And I think that Anthony Miller Jr. has a very good shot of translating into a very, very good NFL starting wide receiver. Then, of course, you get to Joel, linebacker from Western Kentucky. When you get to his production data, pretty solid, 93.10 in terms of his solo tackle data. It pretty much hits above the All-Pro threshold, but it looks kind of in between an All-Pro to Pro Bowl player when you look at the averages in terms of his production data. And when you look at his athleticism traits, 49.47 in terms of explosiveness, 72.64 in terms of speed, and 68.22 in terms of flexibility for his size. Joel essentially has the speed and flexibility of a Pro Bowl linebacker without the explosiveness of a Pro Bowl linebacker. However, he looks like a guy that could translate and become a long-term starter. So in many ways, I think when you look at Quinn, you look at Joel, you're looking at linebackers that have very good speed and a very good chance to become long-term starters. And I think that that's why I like this class a lot, is they have guys that they may not have the crazy high upside. They definitely have solid traits when it comes to production and when it comes to athleticism. Then, of course, you get to Beau Nichols, interior defensive lineman out of Delaware. When you look at his athleticism traits, he had a 77.92 in terms of explosiveness, 85.24 in terms of speed, and 88.62 in terms of flexibility for his size. In many ways, he has all-pro level athleticism traits. In terms of his production, I didn't really add his production here because of his level of competition. Production at that level, all the data I use for production stuff is based on FBS level, and it's just not the smartest thing to do to compare a FCS player's production to FBS guys, if that makes any sense. But still, great athleticism traits, also fairly young player. I think this guy is someone that could end up becoming a long-term starter or better because of his athleticism traits. So I think this is a pretty good pick in terms of that perspective there. Then, of course, you get to Kylie Fitz, edge out of Utah. When you get to his production, this is the only major hiccup with him. 12.29 in terms of solo tackle data, 25.96 in terms of sack data, and 8.55 in terms of tackle for loss data. Just downright dreadful production when you look at it compared to All-Pro potential, Pro Bowl potential, the averages in terms of All-Pro and Pro Bowl. But the reason why you're buying him is because of his athleticism traits. 56.17 in terms of explosiveness, 81.17 in terms of speed, and 97.81 when it comes to flexibility for his size. In many ways, Fitz has all-pro level athleticism without the all-pro production to go with it. So he could become a long-term starter. He could end up just becoming a bit of a backup / rotational guy. But bottom line is, I don't see this guy as someone who's going to have a tremendously... I don't think he's ever going to live up to his athleticism testing, but he definitely has a good shot at becoming a successful NFL player because of his athleticism traits. And then finally, we get to Javon Wims, wide receiver out of Georgia. Pretty good production traits, at least hits long-term starter threshold of 60.72, which is above 58. So again, he has a pretty good shot at becoming a long-term starter in terms of the bottom end thresholds. But when you look at the averages, it doesn't look that tremendous because of that. The averages usually is 81.45 in terms of a long-term starter. He's only 60.72, but does have good athleticism traits. 48.55 in terms of explosiveness, 69.18 in terms of speed, and 51.61 in terms of flexibility for his size. In many ways, he has All-Pro / Pro Bowl level one All-Pro / Pro Bowl athleticism trait in terms of his speed, which is good enough to become a successful NFL player. So Wims is a guy that's not 100% likely to become a long-term starting wide receiver, but he definitely has enough traits in terms of his production and in terms of his speed score where he could end up becoming a long-term starting wide receiver, or at least becoming a number 3 or a number 4 type. So overall, when it comes to the Chicago Bears draft class, I really do like this draft class. I think you got linebackers with a very good shot to become long-term starters. You got a center who is by far the best testing center in the class in terms of data. You got 2 wide receivers that could potentially become long-term starters. You got Beau Nichols, who's a bit of a mystery, but is definitely one of the more athletic defensive tackles in this draft class. And you got a really, really athletic edge guy that may not end up becoming much because of his production data, but hey, if he becomes a pretty good rotational guy, I think that's a pretty solid pick. So overall, I do like this Bears class. I think there's a lot of solid picks. Let me know in the comment section below, how do you feel about this Bears class? And of course, my name is James Coburn. You can find my other work at draftcoburn.wordpress.com. You can also follow me on Twitter at Geometrics. And if you like this content and you want more content like this, be sure to leave a like and subscribe. Share this video as well with anybody that you know. Hit that notification button so that you're always reminded when another video of mine drops. And I'll talk to you guys in the next video. Peace!